The Dershow.
The question is, who's paying for all this? Tents have suddenly sprung up on college campuses all over the country. Pre-published signs, pre-printed signs were distributed, and they're all the same, and they all have the same message. These were well organized, and who organized them? Well, you'll be shocked to know who's paying for some of these things. You don't think of John D. Rockefeller as a radical leftist. He was obviously a right-wing capitalist, the personification of right-wing capitalism. His son or grandson, I forget which, Rocky, Governor Rockefeller, was conservative. I know I was part of the campaign by Arthur Goldberg against him. But the Rockefeller Brothers Fund has become a source of hard left, radical, anarchistic, and anti-Semitic operations. The Rockefeller Brothers Fund is now supporting financially organizations that are anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, and the fund is an old acquaintance of mine, Peter Beinart, who grew up as an Orthodox Jew and went to a Jewish school, and now has become one of the most virulent, toxic, anti-Semitic and failed academic. Wasn't doing very well. He was a failed journalist. He wasn't doing very well. And he decided he needed a niche. So he developed a niche. His niche was, hey, I'm Jewish. My kids go to Jewish school. I wear a kippah sometimes. And I am more anti-Zionist and more anti-Israel than anybody. That's been his shtick and his bit. And of course, it earned him great accolades. He became a contributing editor at the New York Times. He writes drivel. He never would have gotten a job at the New York Times if he was pro-Israel. So he was smart, clever, opportunistic, and he became a talking dog. What's a talking dog? A talking dog is a Jew who was so strongly opposed to Israel that, wow, a talking dog. Wow, a guy from yeshiva, an Orthodox Jew who was so anti-Israel. So, and that talking dog has managed to capitalize on his act. I don't even know whether he believes it or not. I'm just not sure. I've debated him on numerous occasions. I can say I really whipped his rear on all the occasions. He's not much of a debater, and he's not much of a writer. But the New York Times wants him because he's a Jewish anti-Israel. And the Rockefeller Brothers Fund wants him. So he's a trustee of the Rockefeller Fund. And he's one of those people who decides who gets the money. So who's getting the money? Getting the money is anti-Zionist, anti-Israel, and anti-Semitic groups. The same thing is true of George Soros funding. George Soros is another. He was a Jew who helped the Nazis during the Holocaust, a Jew who hates Israel, hates Zionism, and who really hates Jews. Again, another example of an anti-Semitic Jew. And his foundation helps to fund Jewish Voice for Peace. Now, everybody says Jewish Voice for Peace. What a wonderful named organization. It's like reading the Communist Party's constitution. It was terrific. It was better than our constitution. Of course, nobody ever abided by anything in it, but it gave all these terrific rights. Jewish Voice for Peace. Wow, it's Jewish and it's for peace. No, neither. It's not Jewish. Its members, only some of them are Jewish. Many of them are not. They just took the name instead of calling themselves anarchist communists who hate America and hate Israel. That wouldn't be much of a title. Jewish Voice for Peace. Wow. CNN says, oh, we're interviewing Jewish people now. Jewish Voice for Peace. No, they're not Jewish. And they're not for peace. And they don't use their voice. They use violence, and they use threats, and they use intimidation, and they use hate speech. So that's Jewish Voice for Peace, funded in large part by these kinds of foundations. And so those are the people who are now funding these anti-Israel activities. Students for Justice in Palestine is funded both by some of these organizations and by foreign anti-American organizations. And I think it's time for a really good journalist to look inside these organizations, find out precisely what percentage of Jewish Voice for Peace are Jews and what percentage are just pretending. And look at the board and the trustees of the Rockefeller's Brothers Fund, I think Rockefeller would be turning over in his grave. The Ford Foundation also. Now, this is at least appropriate. Henry Ford was a virulent anti-Semite. He wrote all these books that Hitler loved and magazines, the Dearborn Independent. So he hated Jews. He was an overt anti-Semite. And now the Ford Foundation is becoming pretty overtly anti-Semitic. The time has come to look into some of these organizations. Do the people who contribute to them know what they're contributing to? Do the people who have funded them, the families of Ford and Rockefeller and others, do they know what's being funded? I doubt it very, very much.